Within a given industry also the material flow analysis can identify the economies of scale, as I mentioned about the amount of used oil or the tire issues, any specific waste stream we want to look at. And then we can identify the inefficiencies within the waste management programs we may take up. Then within that stream also, what are the hazardous waste we have to deal with? We have no place on this island to deal with that. And then we also promote resource utilization optimization, that how we best use anything, determine what are the resources available for a recovery within that stream. Let's look at the engine coolant also, same way. So what happens that it cannot be poured down to the drain because somebody has to treat it. So is there any way we can process the coolant and reuse it again? And another thing very sensitive is the fireworks also, the perchlorate in the fireworks. So what can we do? How is there any way to capture the perchlorate so that it doesn't go to the ocean? If we have a rain the night of the fireworks, so those kind of things, it's as I say, it's an industrial ecology issue. So then it's going to help shape the policy and also help drive the industry into a better profitability or a better way of managing their things. So what are the items we can consider for a material flow analysis? Of course, the municipal waste itself, the wastewater, particularly right now the two treatment plants are, most of the treatment plants I would say, except maybe half of them, they're primary with putting their wastewater into the primary settled wastewater into for a western disposal. But then sludge is a big problem. So there is not a big taker for the sludge. There is a company which makes pelletized sludge, but the market is minimal here. So the sludge has to be disposed of somewhere. So it's going to PBT landfill or a Waimanalo Gulch landfill. There are some other problems with putting too much sludge into the landfill, that the temperature of the Waimanalo Gulch is very high. It's operating in a very above the thermophilic range. That means 180 degrees inside temperature of the landfill. There is a danger it can catch fire also. Like Kona, there's a fire burning on a landfill for many years. Once it burns, it's not like big fire, but something is burning and the carbon dioxide coming out. Then petroleum we can look into. That's a high dependence on imports. Ferrous metals, for the market is there. Basically, people are making money on the ferrous metals, aluminum and glass. No money right now. Plastics, some possibility. The DOD was looking at getting fuel out of plastic, but it may not happen that easily. Also, still it's good to know that what are the grades of plastics available and the produce in the supermarket, the ash, tires, electronic wastes, and the hazardous waste also, the green waste. Green waste, of course, the state has a good program like what the name of this Hawaiian Earth Products. They are doing a lot of compost, but then again we don't have as much demand also. That is the problem. Construction, C&D waste. So these are all different flows we can look into. So let's look at Oahu. There is a group in Yale. They looked at, they did a high-level study that what comes into Oahu, what goes out. So with ships about, if you look at this left side diagram here, upstream we call. So what are the imports minus exports and plus production within Oahu? So if you look at imports are 16, 17 million tons. Exports primarily, you can guess actually, I'm going to wait for that, and plus the produce within Oahu. So we have a total apparent consumption of 13.5 million tons per year. So the island is building up by that much every year, but of course not all. So you can guess what it is. So the exports are going to off island. The downstream side within Oahu, what happens? We have some export of recycled materials going to Philippines or China or other mainland destinations. On island recycling going to happening about 400,000 tons or so, and what is happening in the landfills about, you can say altogether about 2 million tons or so. So if you look at imports of the 13 or so million tons, so look at what is the big import here. crude oil, 9.5 million tons. So not only we, the 75 or 70% of the population use all the crude oil for petroleum, the transportation needs, but also it goes to the remaining 20 to 30% of the population on other islands. So this is what also those ships are carrying the refined petroleum to other islands. Then the finished products, building our infrastructure, buildings, this is also coming here. Metals and all the other stuff here. So the fossil fuel, when it burns, what it produces? The greenhouse gas primarily, carbon dioxide. And in terms of waste generation, so we have our construction demolition, that's a big chunk, then paper, cardboard type thing, discarded products like broken equipment, batteries, old furniture, stuff like that. Food waste is pretty big, 200,000 tons. Scrap metals, they are making money on this, it's not that bad here. Green waste, we may not have all the demand for 160,000 tons. And ash and other things here. So what can you do or local municipalities do? So we need better accounting of the wastes. So I guess we had a meeting, Lucas and myself had a meeting with Colonel Killian at the Wheeler Air Force, Wheeler base. We are working with 6 major military bases to know, they are like islands within an island. So how they are interdependent on each other and how they depend on Oahu, knowing that issue also. So they are interested in having some high school students involved. I don't know how legally they were a little bit worried that if the teachers and students can be willing to participate with them, there's something called a term dumpster diving that whoa, because they are pretty aggressive. I was impressed that the military is probably 5 to 10 years ahead of the civilians in terms of their managing their wastes. So they need to know, okay, is there anything they're putting in the dumpster so that can be reused or taken out to a recycling center. So if that's going to be useful for the students, they will be happy to sponsor, but some legality, other issues can be worked out also. So then we need to identify the major upstream contributors to waste generation. What is producing? Is there any way to suppress that? But of course, there is always a conflict that the economy wants to grow in 8%. So how do you manage both same time? And then encourage a better waste management behavior in your community. Then a lot of communities have done that, but again, it needs some political will also to some extent, and population pressure, pressurizing the politicians. Resource substitution, this is regularly done in the industry, even military. I had a project about 12-15 years back looking at hazardous waste minimization in military. One issue was that they were using solvent-based ink, or even for part cleaning, they are using trichloroethylene. So is there any way we can use soap-based or just hot water or soybean-based ink so that we produce less hazardous waste? That means we have to change the process. Soya ink is going to take more time for drying. So maybe we have to, the old machine have to be gradually changed so that you have a heating element or something, it can dry out. So that's possible. Then we have to look at what are the secondary or tertiary use of these materials, like in antifreeze or coolant. We can reprocess, maybe go for 2 or 3 cycles. So at least see how much we can get out of them. And finally, carpooling, this little, if the greenhouse gas is the biggest user of the Hawaii is producing, then is there any way you can reduce that? So I think with that, I'm going to close, and any questions?